All right, good morning. I think we will slowly start to tuck into it. Welcome to the Power BI webinar on opportunity analysis. I suspect there may still be a few people logging in and getting settled, so while we're waiting for them, I want to briefly introduce the webinar platform that we're using so that you know how to navigate and get the most out of this session. So I'm just going to show you a mirror of what you're probably already looking at on your screen. We're using Microsoft Teams for this webinar, so you should see a Q&A on the right-hand side. I've enabled question and answer. If you can hear me now, if you could just type a message in the Q&A to let me know that everything is working and that you have found that. You can minimize the Q&A so that you can make it full screen and see a little bit easier what I'm doing. And you're able to post those questions anonymously. And if you ask a question and I haven't gotten around to answering it by the end of the session, just reply with your email and we'll follow up with it that way. It's important to note here that there is about a 20 to 30 second delay from when I speak to when you hear me. So because of that delay, it won't be possible for me to answer the questions live, but I will keep an eye on them throughout the session, and I'll try and leave a few minutes at the end of the session to talk to some of the more common questions. So make sure you ask them as you think of them, and I'll try and speak to them at the end. All questions go directly to me only, but if it is a common question and one that I think is really good, I might publish it as a featured question, and those will show up over here in the featured. All right. So I think we've given people enough time to arrive. So if not, you can always rewind and go back, catch yourself up. Before we get stuck into the Power BI side of things, I want to let you know who you're listening to this morning. My name is Allison Kennedy. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer across the entire suite of Office 365, but I do specialize in Power BI and Excel reporting. When I'm not training, I do a bit of consulting and support people who are struggling to build or update existing reports and dashboards. All right. So who do we have here today? I asked you when you registered to tell me what you were hoping to get out of this session. And I thank you for taking the time to comment in that registration form. It really helps me get a clearer picture of who I'm speaking to today so that I can make this session worth your time and effort. There were a few key themes that came through quite strongly from your comments. And as you can see, we've got people here today with a broad range of skills and experience in Power BI. If this is your first look at Power BI, this session will give you a good overview of what it's capable of so you can decide how it might be useful to you. I'm going to go through the entire process of building a report from start to finish and demonstrate some of the most common data transformations and Power BI features along the way. I will also be using some advanced formulas and techniques, but don't get bogged down in these if it's your first time seeing Power BI. Remember that you signed up for an overview. Treat this as a true demonstration of what can be done with just a little bit of knowledge. For those of you that are already using Power BI and have a little bit of knowledge, I am going to be doing some advanced DAX formulas and showing you a few nifty things that Power BI can do. The specific scenario that I've chosen today will demonstrate some of the more complex solutions that you can implement in your own data scenarios using DAX, relationships, and Power BI features and combining them to get the most out of the tool. But know that you don't have to use these advanced features to get something out of it. So what is it that we are actually looking at today? You will have seen this registration form online, so I won't dwell on it too much. But what I'd like to do now is introduce you to the data that we're going to be working with over the next hour and demonstrate a problem that we've been asked to solve. So imagine that you're a marketing manager for the AdventureWorks Cycles company, and in this webinar, we're going to be focusing on clothing sales and see how we can increase our profit in the clothing segment of our products. Note that we've got 3 subcategories within clothing: unisex, women's, and men's. So we will be looking at those in our reporting today. So before I show you how to create the report, I'm going to start with an existing Power BI report and have a look at the data and what we've got going on. So here you'll see those segments that we've got, and you can see the unisex, the women's, and the men's clothing segments down here, along with our bikes and components and accessories interspersed throughout. I've got a graph here showing the profit by segment, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the View tab and turn on the bookmarks. And I'm going to use the bookmarks to tell a story about this data that I've prepared earlier. So I'll hopefully have time at the end of the session to show you how I created these bookmarks, but you can see that these bookmarks here come up and they'll create this little slide that I can tick through. So we're starting with this home page, which is the profit by segment. And I'm interested in the women's segment, and I could actually right click to drill through to one of the other pages, or I can step through my bookmark. So we've highlighted the women's segment here. We can see how much profit that's bringing us, not quite as much as the unisex. So I want to try and see how we can improve on that. So I'm going to drill through and look at the details just for the women's segment. And if I expand this pane here, the visualizations pane, you'll see that because I used that drill through from the segment summary page, I am only looking at segment that are women's. And so all of these charts here are showing you the women's segment. And I've just spotlighted a few where there's quite a big difference. So occupation, there's a stark increase in skilled manual. So people who have the occupation of skilled manual seem to be a target market for that women's segment. Education, there's quite a drastic difference there as well. So we can see that people with high school education are much more of our target market for this segment than others. And as you might expect, gender. So females are more likely to be interested in that women's segment than males. You do get some males buying some items from the women's line, maybe for a friend or a girlfriend or a daughter, but primarily we're looking at females. So focusing on females, skilled manual, and high school education. So if I go back to my segment summary page, I'm going to drill through, and I'll actually show you the drill through this one. So if I right click on here, I can drill through to the customer details page. And here I can see all of the customers who've bought something in the women's segment, and that totals 37. And I can see all of the customers that I've got at the AdventureWorks Cycle company, 157. So there's a difference there, about 120 customers who've never bought anything from the women's segment. I could do a comparison and size these up and see who is a customer that hasn't bought from the women's segment. But what I want to do is I want to be able to select a segment and see who hasn't bought that from me. I want to see where that opportunity exists. Everything up until this point is pretty straightforward, and as we go through and build this report again today, you'll see how we can do that. And if you're at a beginner level, you'd be able to get up to this point quite easily. Getting to the next stage is where those of you that are already using Power BI are going to be interested. And that's where we start to bring in some of the advanced functionality. And we can actually see who hasn't bought things from us and where's that opportunity. So that's the problem that I want to try and address today and what we want to solve. But like I said, we're going to start from the beginning and build the entire thing from scratch. All right. So in order to build this report, we need to get data and pull it into Power BI. And Power BI lets us pull data from a few different sources and transform that data. So I am going to open a new Power BI file and start from scratch. And I'll just show you the data that we're working with is in an Excel file. So you can pull data from Power BI into Power BI from lots of different sources, CSV. You can actually put lots of similarly structured files into a folder and pull them all in together. You can connect directly to a web database or even to a website. Today we're going to use Excel just for simplicity, but once you've learned how to pull data into Power BI, the process is pretty similar moving forward. So here's the data we're working with. It's just a simple Excel file. We've got some Excel tables, and they're all in different tabs across the bottom of the workbook. So I've got my list of products and customers, and you can see that my customers are listed with some information, but their marital status and gender both have M, and it doesn't make very clear what that means. That's some of the stuff that I can clean up and fix in Power BI. You'll also notice that the product name is quite long and challenging. There's a lot of information in here, and so we can actually split this in Power BI as well and figure out which segments and products. It doesn't matter what size. If they're interested in a jersey, they might be interested in another jersey. So we'll need to be able to split that information as well, and that's something Power BI can do easily for us. All right, so I've got Power BI open over here on my other screen, so I'll just pull that across. So the first step is to get data, and you'll see here the common data sources. If you click on more, you'll be able to see all of the places where you can actually get data from in Power BI. I'm going to choose Excel today and connect to that opportunity analysis data file. So Power BI has actually gone to that file on my desktop, and you'll see I've got the tables and the sheets. I can choose either one for this file. They're quite consistent, clean and tidy sheets. I've used the Shift key to select all of those. And I am going to transform the data for those reasons that we talked about before. I want to replace M with male. I want to split that product name. I want to make things a little bit easier to work with when I get them into my reporting. So the transformations that we do in Power BI are going to be done in the Power Query Editor. And the Power Query Editor opens in a new window in Power BI, and that's what's opened up when I clicked Transform Data. In the Power Query Editor, you'll see a list of queries on the left-hand side. It's just a fancy name for tables, essentially. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the query settings. These are the steps that Power BI goes through to refresh your data. So if we look at that customer table, we wanted to change the marital status to say married and single. And so you'll see that Power BI has done a few steps over here on the right-hand side, and I am going to add a new step to replace those values. So first thing I need to do is decide if I want to transform this existing column or add a new one. I'm happy with that column as it is. I don't need 2 columns about marital status, so I'm just going to transform and do a replace values. We'll replace M with married, and do that again, S with single. Super easy. No Excel formula is needed. You can see that the formula is here in the formula bar. If you click on the View tab, you can turn that on and off. But you don't have to know how to write the formulas. Power BI does that for you. I just have to click a couple of buttons. And next time this Excel file gets updated, all I need to do is refresh the preview, and Power BI will replace all the M's with male, all these M's with married, and produce a beautiful report for me. Easy. The other thing I want to do is I want to combine first name and last name into one single column. This time I want to keep the first and last name columns as separate, so I'm going to look in the Add Column tab and Merge Columns. I want to put a space between these columns, and we'll call this full name. That's it. If we scroll to the far right, you'll see that we've now got a new column with full name, and no 2 customers have exactly the same name. I've got 157 distinct, 157 unique. I'm not going to go into the difference between distinct and unique today, but it is handy to be able to see that column distribution. Again, you can turn that on in the formula in the View tab. All right, now we need to look at that product name. So here I've got English product name, and you can see we've got road HL, comma, frame, comma, black, comma. So you can start to see the pattern of how this product name is structured. And of course, data in equals data out. So if your data coming in is a complete shambles and a big mess, it will take you some time to clean it up in Power BI. But once you find that structure and you're able to figure out what's going on in that column, you can build the formula and those applied steps for Power BI to handle it. So I am going to do a split column, and we've identified that comma is the thing that separates the product features in here. So we call that a delimiter. So I'm going to split the English product name by comma. Got a few options here. If I just wanted to split the category and the rest of it, I could just do the leftmost. But I want to get the segment, the subsegment, the style, and the size if it's there. So we'll do each occurrence and click OK. And you'll see that that puts 2 steps over here in my applied steps. It splits the column, and it detects the data type for me automatically. Data type is really important in Power BI. You want to make sure that it detects the right data type. And I try to do that all in one step. So if I want to change the data type of list price, I will do it here where it's done that automatic detection for me and change that to a currency data type. This still has a few different bits of information in here. So you can see we've got a few different all-purpose, a few different mountains. I want to just be able to see that core segment. Is it an all-purpose? Is it a mountain product? Is it a road product, a touring? So what I'm going to do is split this column again. And this time we're going to use that hyphen. And that's it. So now we've turned one single column into 5 columns, and I'll just quickly rename these. So we'll call this segment subsegments. So you can right click to rename. I'm doing a double click. Notice that all of the renaming is going into one step in my query settings. So that renamed columns, if you look in the formula bar, you can see that it's renamed all 5 of those columns in one single step. Keeps it nice and tidy. Easy. The last thing that we can do today is we're going to look at the fact internet sales table. And I'm going to double check the data type. So make sure that your dates have come through properly, that they're in the right formats, picked up the dates. I'm going to set this to fixed decimal number. And I could have selected both of these columns together using the control key. And you can transform the data type up here for multiple columns at once. All right, so we want to try and figure out what's going to bring us the most profit. And at the moment, I've only got the unit price and the unit cost and the order quantity. So I'm going to start by multiplying the unit price times the order quantity to get the sales amount. And again, I want to add a new column for sales amount. So I'm going to look in the Add Column tab and do a standard multiply. Order doesn't matter in multiplication, so I could have done unit price times order quantity or order quantity times unit price. I could rename that here like I did before, but I'm going to be a bit of a pro and do an advanced tip here, and I'm going to rename that up here in the formula bar and call that sales amount. That just saves me adding an extra step of naming it multiplication and then renaming it. Oops, I want that to be sales amount. So I did unit price times order quantity. We could do it the other way around. We could do unit cost times order quantity. And again, do a standard multiply. So this one, I'm going to call total product cost. That's the cost of each unit times the quantity that they've ordered, gives me the total cost. Now I can look at my profit. So I am going to do sales amount minus total product cost. Order matters in subtraction, and you'll notice that the first column that I select is always the one that comes first. So I need to select sales amount first, hold the control key, select total product cost, and do a standard subtract. We'll call that profit, and that's it. No messing around with formulas and tables. I don't have to worry about inconsistent column formulas. I don't have to worry about corrupting my data. I can't change any of this. It's safe in the data source. And I've got a really clear, easy to follow list of all of the steps that I've applied so that I know exactly where that data is coming from and how that profit has been calculated. I'm going to stop here and save this file. When you're in the Power Query Editor, you have the option to apply your steps later. That's just a nice quick way to save your file. So we'll do opportunity analysis and save. Without waiting for Power BI to go through and follow each one of these steps and actually apply it to your data. So in here, you'll note that that's just based on the top 1,000 rows. It hasn't actually loaded all of my data for me. I'm just getting a data preview. So we have done quite a few things inside of the Power Query Editor. Gives you a good overview. There's plenty more to explore in there, but it should give you something to get started. So now we can jump into the report. So I am going to click the Home tab and close and apply, and let that load my data into the Power BI report. While that's loading, I've got a couple of questions. So somebody asked, when I was transforming those columns, could I have copied the column first and then split the copied column? The answer is yes. So if I want to keep the original data in that original column, rather than using the Transform tab to split that column, I could go to the Add Column tab and duplicate the column first, and then split that duplicated column. All right, so now that our data has loaded, you can see that we've got those queries or those tables over here in the Fields pane. And now we're going to start building the report. I like to think of building my report like building a house. And these are the key structural components that you have in that report. So you need to start at the foundation. We're going to start with the model. So if I click over here, this takes me to the model view in Power BI. And this is where all of our tables connect together. And so you can see all of the relationships that exist between your data. We pulled this from Excel. It's just a normal Excel file. There's nothing fancy about it. And Power BI has already detected a lot of relationships between these tables. You'll notice that the relationships that it's created have similar column names. So that gave Power BI a hint that these fields or these columns have related information. But when we do relationships in Power BI, there's a few things that we need to keep in mind. So the most common type of relational model that you'll see when working with Power BI is what we call a star schema. And it's created with one fact table in the middle and as many dimension tables as you need to get the answers that you want in your report. So in this example, our fact table is sales, but you might not be doing sales. You could be reporting on registrations, incidents, responses. You could be looking at survey results, lots of different things. But what's important with the fact table is that you've got one row for each transaction, and that usually contains a date and lots of key columns. In this case, we've got our customer key, our product key, things that connect the fact table to that dimension table. The dimension tables are more static and they are very unique. We need to make sure that there's only one row for each. If it's a dimension customer table, one row for each customer. If it's a dimension product table, one row for each product. So if I go back to my report, you'll see that with the DIM customer table, we are using the customer key. And remember how I showed you that the full name, there was no customer with the same name. There's no customer with the same customer key. So each customer key appears in the DIM customer table only once, but it appears in the sales table multiple times. So that same customer is buying multiple products from me and coming back multiple times to place multiple orders, we hope. Same thing with the products. We're using the product key to connect those two tables, and we sell each product many times. So that's the many side of that relationship here. It is possible to create other types of relationships in Power BI, many to many, but you'll get a warning, and unless you are a pro and you know that you need that many to many relationship, avoid them. If you get a many-to-many, something is wrong with your dimension table, so you need to fix the data. Don't just carry on with the report. All right, so good news is Power BI figures this out for the most part automatically. You just need to know enough about your data, and if you're working with your data, it's a lot easier than working with this abstract example. But you just need to know enough to look and say, yep, that makes sense. Product key to product key, that's doing the right thing. Oh, this is missing a relationship, so I'm going to do subcategory key to product subcategory key. They had a slightly different name, so Power BI didn't pick up on it. That's worked with the one-to-many, so we can carry on, no problems there. All right. Once you've got the relationships and the data transformed, the rest of it just falls into place. The next step in building our house or building our report is this data view. And in here, I can format my data. So I've got unit price and unit cost. Those have been formatted as currency, and I can say, actually, I don't care about the decimal place in that. We're just going to truncate that and make it easier to read. So we do our data type in Power Query, but we can do our formatting here and make it look pretty. We'll do profit because we'll be working with that a lot. And then finally, we're ready to move to the report stage. And so if I bring up this other report that I showed you to start with, we're just going to create the profit by segment and make that drill through to a customer demographics page. So to start my report, I need to find the fields that I want over here on the right-hand side. Depending on what field I choose, Power BI is going to pick the best fit graph it thinks. So if I pick a numerical field like profit, Power BI creates a column chart. It uses my data formatting, and I can come into my product table and tick the segment as well. So now we've got our profit by segment, but when I right click, I don't have any option to drill through and see the details. So we're going to name this page segment and create a new page for customer demographics. Now I've just got my AdventureWorks database here. I've got lots of demographics to choose from. Note that if I choose a text field, Power BI creates a table, but I can still turn that into a column chart, and I can show my profit by that demographic. So we've got profit by education, and we'll do profit by marital status. Note to create a new visual, I click away from the visual so nothing is selected, tick the box, Power BI automatically puts that there for me, tries to line them up. I can make it pretty later. We'll do this one by gender. If the visual is selected, when I tick a box, it adds to that visual. Now remember, it matters what data type your columns are. So if I try to add a number of children to this visual, it doesn't look quite the same as the others that have been created, and I can't really see what's going on. If we look over in the visualizations pane, you'll see that because number of children is a numeric field, it's put that in the values and it's doing a sum of the number of children. I want number of children to be treated as a dimension. So I want to splice and dice by number of children. So I'm going to move that to the axis. And now you can see the number of children and profit split by how many children each customer have. We'll have the same problem if I try and do yearly income. So I could preempt that because I know that that's not going to put it in the right spot. So I can just drag that straight into the axis field and create my sales amount by yearly income. All right, lots of dimensions. I could keep going. We could do profit, number of cars. But that gives you an idea of how this works. So I want to be able to right-click on this bar here and see the women's segment and drill through to that customer demographics. When I select this table, you can see over here on the fields pane, the yellow ticks telling me which tables are being used in this visualization. I've got segment, and that's coming from the dim product table. So if I want to be able to drill through to customer demographics, I need to go to the customer demographics page, and I need to add drill through fields here for that segment from the dim product table. So I'm just going to drag that into here. And you'll see now when I go back to the segment page, if I right-click on the women's segment, drill through becomes available to the customer demographics page. And that's because I've added the segment to the drill through field here. All right, so now you can see that we're looking just at the women's segment. It looks a little bit different than it did in my sample. And that's because we're looking at all occupations. And of course, I haven't put occupation on here. So if we do profit by occupation, we've got quite a few resellers who buy products from us and then sell them on. And they're going to skew my results when I'm looking at education and gender of my customer because I don't actually know the demographics of the final person who's buying that product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a filter on the entire page and say, give me all occupations except for resellers. And that's where we can start to see the stark contrasts in who our target audience is for this particular segment of products. And that's it. That's Power BI in a nutshell. But now I want to be able to see those customers who haven't bought that segment. So I'm going to start building a customer database here. And I want to see the profit from each customer. I want to focus on those females. So I'm going to do a slicer here. And I can actually change that type under my formatting, make it look like pretty buttons. I want to focus on the customers who have high school education. So I'm going to put a slicer for education over here, and I want to focus on those skilled manual occupation. So again, we'll do a slicer for skilled manual here. So we want high school, skilled manual, and females. And you'll see that that's only showing me the customers who have bought things from me. I want to see the customers who haven't bought something from me and who I might have opportunity to sell more things to. They fit into this segment, so I want to see who they are and how likely they might be to be interested in certain products. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into transform data, and I am going to make a copy of my product table. There's two ways I can do this in Power Query. I could either copy the table, which will copy all of the steps and perform them again, but I don't need to do anything different in this table. I want an exact copy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference this completed product table. And so you'll see that whatever this dim product looks like, that's what's going to show here. And I am going to name this promoted products. And we are going to close that and load it into my data model. Because I'm adding new data to the model, I need to go and check my relationships again. And this is where the fun stuff comes in. So we already have dim product related to our sales table. I'm actually going to delete the relationship between promoted products and the sales. I don't want to filter like we do in a normal data model. I want to do my own filtering using DAX. So DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions. And we can do lots with DAX. Like I said, I'm doing some advanced DAX today. You don't need it to do a lot of your reporting, but it can give you some really valuable insights. So the first DAX that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new table. And I want to be able to select some segments that have something in common with the products that I'm trying to promote. So I'm going to call this related subcategory. And I just want a unique list of the product segments. I'm going to use the values function to create that table, and you'll see there's those segments that we saw earlier. Remember, the unisex, the men's, and the women's are those clothing segments that we're focusing on. Again, because I've added a new table to my model, I'm going to check the relationship view, and you'll see that that table is also unrelated to the rest of the data model. So what I can do now is I can create a slicer over here for my product segments. And at the moment, it does absolutely nothing because it's not related to my data. This is where the DAX comes in. So I told you it would be quite complex. I'm going to do two key measures here, and I might change them slightly, but what we're trying to do is figure out if the customer has bought something within that related segment that I just created a filter for. So I want to know if I'm trying to promote women's products, have they bought something from the unisex category? So they might be interested in clothing and apparel. So there's a high potential that I'd be able to, they're a good opportunity, they'd be a good target for our women's products that we've got coming out. So I want to know, have they bought the related product? Or if I don't select a related product, are they an existing customer who buys from us, or are they just on our database and never engage? So that's the first step. Are they engaging with us? Are they buying things that are related? The next step, I want to know, are they interested in that promoted product? So it's fine that they've bought related products, but I also need to know, have they bought the promoted product? And if they have, I want to know that they've already bought it. Depending on what my product is, that might mean that not interested, don't bother targeting them. This is an example where you might be able to sell the same person the same t-shirt twice, but in my area and training, if you've come to an Excel Essential Skills course, I'm not going to have very much success in selling the same person another Excel Essentials course. I need to look at related products and selling you the next level. If you're looking at licensing, same person, same customer doesn't need the same license, same type of insurance, etc. So we want to build that into this formula to be able to identify if they've already bought what we're promoting. All right, so here we go. So we've got our segment here. I'm going to name that graph so that we know that that is the related products. Make it a little bit wider so we can see it. And I'm going to do a filter here for the segment and product. And this one I'm going to make a drop down so that it can sit across the top as my header. And now we will do our DAX. So I'm creating what's called measures. Measures float around the data model, and they use the DAX expression to figure out their calculations. So I can create a new measure from any table. Doesn't matter where I put it, just matters where you want to find it. What matters is how we create it. So that first measure that I'm going to create is bought related products. And I want to try and figure out if a customer has bought something that's selected in this related products segment. So first thing I need to do is I need to do a sum across the fact internet sales table of the order quantity to figure out how many products they bought. But I don't want all of the fact internet sales. I want to filter it based on this slicer selection. So I'm going to put a filter around that table. And the filter expression that I'm going to use is I'm going to filter for the related table to the fact internet sales. Remember, that's looking at that data model and those relationships. I want to know if the product segment from the relationships exists in the values of the segment that's selected from that related subcategory table. Remember, there's no relationship between them, but I'm essentially building one here with my DAX. So I'm saying, if I select something here, and that value is in the product segment, then they've bought that related product for me. We take that order quantity and sum it across that entire filtered table. And I want to do that for all products, not just the selected one that I'm looking at. So I'm going to add a filter expression here and say, give me all of my products. So calculate is a very powerful function that can change the filter context for us of this DAX expression. So last step to this is if they have bought something for us, that's going to be greater than 0. And then we'll say yes. Otherwise, no, they haven't bought that related product. And so now I can add that to this table. And now we can see all of the customers who haven't bought that selected product. Right? So in some cases, they're not great customers. They haven't bought anything from us recently. But in some cases, they have bought some products from us, just nothing in that segment that I've selected here. So Julia has bought, she's generated $938 of profit from us, but it hasn't been from the women's segment. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this table into a matrix, and I'm going to pull the product name into this table. So I could actually expand and see what Julia has bought. So she's bought a bike and some gloves, and I'm actually going to filter this table for profit is greater than 0, so that I only see what people have bought. So Julia's bought some gloves, a bike, and a helmet, but she hasn't bought any of the women's clothing apparel, so potentially she might be interested in it. She has bought gloves. Those fall into the unisex category of apparel. So it's possible that she might be interested in my women's promoted product, and I'll give that a name as well. So the last step is I want to create a nice simple database here of the customer's name and their email address so that I can send them marketing information on that promoted product. So now I need to know if they are interested in that promoted product. And in the interest of time, I am going to copy that measure from the PowerPoint slide that I showed you earlier. But remember, we're using that bot related products that we've just created. So if they've bought something from this category that I think is related to what I'm promoting, then it's likely they might be interested in what I'm promoting, only if they haven't already bought it. That's the gist of that measure. So I'll create that measure, and I'm going to put that in my table. And now I can sort by that table and turn off the totals. And we can see that Julia is indeed very likely to be interested in that promoted women's product. If I select Julia, I can see what she's bought from us. I can see that these guys haven't bought any of the related products. Caroline's bought a few things. Brianna hasn't bought any handlebars. Angela hasn't bought anything from us. So they're not as likely to take up my offer. And again, you can customize these. DAX is very flexible, so you can tell it what you want based on your market and your products. And now that I've got these guys in a nice list, I can export my data as a CSV file and use that for mailing and marketing purposes. And then it's just a matter of prettying things up making it easy to read, adding extra information if needed, so that you can have this working the way that you need it to, the way you want. So I could look at mountain, promote something in here, maybe some seats or tires, and see who the target customers are. If I'm looking to sell road tires, they probably should have bought something in the road segment. So those are my target customers. These guys haven't bought in the road segment, so they're not as likely, but it's still possible. And nobody's bought the tire tubes from me, so I don't have any existing customers. And I'll just open up that export so that you can see however you have formatted that table in Power BI, that's how it's going to come to you in Excel. Nice and easy. Send that out. Filter it if you want to. And that is all I've got for you today. I've got one question here about hierarchical relationships in a single table. So in these tables, I've been working a little bit with hierarchies. So you can see I've done from customer down to the product. Those have come from two different tables in my model, but because they have a relationship here in the relationship view, so I've got the DIM customer table and the DIM product table are related by that fact internet sales, and I've got that profit in here. That hierarchy can be built within a single table here. If I want to, if I prefer to have all of that information in one flat table, I can also pull it into the fact table. So if I go to the fact table and I say, I want a new column and I want to see not just the product key, but I actually want to see the product name, I can create a new column inside the fact table that says product name, and just do essentially a VLOOKUP. So I'll just do related product name, and voila, that's going to add that column to my table for me, and then I can build the hierarchy and do my segment and my product and my everything in one place. And when they're all in one table, you can create a hierarchy here. So I can put segment first, and then we would do subsegment, and then we would do product underneath that. And so that's been built into one nice hierarchy for me. That if I just do a new page for you, I can pull that into one table with just one click. So I hope that answers your question about hierarchies. If you've got any other questions, please ask them in the question and A. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed the session. Now that you've seen how to use Power BI to identify target consumers for different product segments, view opportunities for sales that don't exist, it's time to apply it to your data. And like I said, it's going to be a lot easier working with your own data than working with this abstract example that you have never seen before. Some of you might have data that's similar to the example today, but not everyone. And either way, you might need help making that leap from today's example to, okay, well, now how do I actually get stuck in and do this? So ACE have a range of courses that can help you at any stage in the Power BI journey. The dates for upcoming courses are on the ACE website, but they're also posted here on this PowerPoint. The courses in Auckland and Wellington are guaranteed to run, so that means there will definitely be that course on that day. The ones in Hamilton and Christchurch are pending availability, so just check the ACE website and book and get in touch if you're interested in that. If you today found the first half really interesting and you want some more support with building relationships and doing data transformations, Power BI Essential Skills is probably the best course for you to start with. Power BI Next Level is great if you feel confident creating relationships with your data, you understand how your data connects to each other and how the tables work, and you want to improve your reports and get better insights from your data, doing some of the smarter features and starting to get into a little bit of basic DAX. If you're looking to write complex DAX formulas like we did today, there's a dedicated course for DAX as well. And that's it. Thanks for attending the Power BI webinar on a Friday morning. I know I'm going a little bit over time, so appreciate you all sticking around. Hope you found it useful and that you got that good overview that you were looking for if you're a beginner, or that you enjoyed that advanced DAX and unrelated table technique if you're a more intermediate to advanced user. Do value your feedback, so to make it nice and easy, if you just pop into the Q&A and just type one number, how you'd rate this webinar, and any comments or feedback that you've got on the session as well. Once you've done that, you can leave the meeting and start working with your own data in Power BI. Enjoy, and thanks again for your time.